Hi there, my name's Rhodri. I farm here at Moelgolomen Farm with my parents Simon and Monica, my wife Sarah, and our three children Ellen, Ariana and Kai. You're not helping. You're not helping. This is the first edit. Allan. We're a fairly traditional Welsh family farm. We farm Welsh mountain sheep, Welsh black cattle. Most of the farms down by the house there's about 600 feet above sea level, stretching up to about just over 1500 feet at the top of the hills. We've been organic since 1999 and we're also in a lot of environmental schemes. Firstly Tŷ Gofal, more recently Glass Tŷ. Through these schemes we've planted over the last 20 or so years upwards of 70,000 trees on farm, both in our ancient oak woodland, sort of filling up the gaps with oak saplings, and also we've done a fair few miles of hedgerows. Because of the way we farm, we're fortunate to share the farm with lots of beautiful animals. So we've got otters in the lake, we've got stoats, weasels, polecats. Recently pine martens were reintroduced to this part of Wales and we're lucky enough to have caught them on the trail camera in our woods. Well, thanks for that. Aslan. On the bird side of things, at the top of the farm there's skylarks, golden plovers, snipe, we've got peregrines, buzzards, kestrels. We also see tawny owls and barn owls, and we're lucky enough to have barn owls nesting in the shed last year. As I mentioned, we keep Welsh mountain sheep and Welsh black cattle up in the hills, the traditional breeds, because they've adapted to survive in these hills for millennia, so it makes sense to us to keep using what's already here. Despite that, we're always looking at ways to improve our sheep, so for the last 20 or so years we've been performance recording with Signet. This involves taking 8-week weights, scan weights, and then we do muscle and fatback scanning on the lambs, and then we'll selectively breed. Once all that information is put into an algorithm by Signet, we get back an index or a score for that animal's estimated breeding value, EBV, and we'll use that information just as an extra tool when selecting breeding stock. So by selecting for improved genetics within this environment, it means we're selecting for sheep that thrive on these hills, that don't need a lot of extra feed. We don't want bigger sheep, so we try and make sure we're always selecting for smaller breeding stock, but that produce lambs that are really fast growing, just off grass, so don't need any extra concentrates. And we've seen massive changes over the last 20 or so years. The last few years we've sold our lambs locally through a box scheme, and then more recently set up a website, welshmountainlamb.com, where people anywhere in the UK can direct order our Welsh mountain lamb. It's been really successful. Unfortunately, like a lot of people trying to do this over the last few years, we've been hit this last summer with our local butcher closing, like a lot of local butchers have. He kept battling for a long time, but he's decided to retire now, so I'm now looking for a new butcher and haven't been able to sell any lambs pre-Christmas. Other ventures we have on farm is the farm's fully powered by our little hydro system. It's only a little 13 kilowatt system, but when it's raining in West Wales, which is most of the time, the whole house and farmyard is powered by renewable energy from on farm. Another venture we set up recently is wildwelshtreehouses.com. So we've had one treehouse tiered on end up and running for guests over the last couple of years, and we're just on the cusp of finishing the second one called Tŷ Derw, which again looking forward to welcoming more people to the farm. Last year I was involved in Farming Connect's Prosper from Pasture scheme, which has again been really interesting. Rotational grazing is something I've been looking at for a long time to do on farm, so that gave me the confidence really to get going on it. And this last year we've been rotationally grazing the twins and the cattle on the lower fields, because obviously the singles are on top of the mountain, and I think even within a year we've seen a massive difference in the diversity of the flora and the amount of grass that's always in front of the sheep. And actually the flowers really struck me. There were a lot more flowers around for the pollinators, which is great. So I would say it's a huge success, and I'm hoping going forward to create more double fences with hedgerows in, because my concern slightly was rotationally grazing, strip grazing, and certain small fields not having enough shelter for the stock. So I would like to double fence, plant lots more hedges, and it's something we're talking to the Woodland Trust about potentially doing a scheme. So that's pretty much us really. It's a very uncertain time for all farmers at the moment, but certainly for Welsh hill farmers, I think, with the sort of dual threats of uncertainties of the post-Brexit support payments, or climate change obviously being always on the horizon, potential changes that could hit us with, and also sort of large multinationals, this new fashion for companies buying up Welsh hill farms, which is happening in this area, and covering them all in trees, which could have a huge adverse impact on local communities, rural economics, as well as traditional cultures, and here in this part of Wales, the Welsh language. But at the same time, I think there's lots of opportunities on the horizon. We just need to get our message out there. I think if people can understand what farms like this are trying to do, and the positive message we can bring with a diversity of fauna and flora on farm, our positive impacts on climate change, there's a lot more interest, it seems, in people wanting to know where their food comes from. So I think there could potentially be more and more opportunity to sell direct to consumers, which I think could hopefully offers a bit more of a guarantee for a future farming up in the hills. Just as a close, I listen to a lot of podcasts about farming, like a lot of people do. And there's a good one, Farm Connect run, called the Ear to the Ground podcast, where at the end of every show they ask whoever the guest is what makes a good farmer. And I've been pondering on this, and I suddenly remembered a conversation I had with a bunch of mates, and I remember them all arguing about who the best surfer in this area was. And one of them said, the best surfer in the water is always the one having the most fun. And I always think that's an expression farmers could learn a lot from. So just do whatever makes you happy with your farming. You know, if it's winning the livestock shows, do that. If it's making your millions, have a crack at doing that. If it's having lots of a diversity of nature on your farm, do that. And if you want to spend more time with your family and friends, make sure you do that. So on that note, I'm going to go away and try and become the best farmer I can be.